Welcome to Extend Lifespan Naturally. I'm Dr. David DeRose, President of Compass Health Consulting, and your host on this journey into a glimpse of how we can live longer and live better. Have you ever thought about it? What does it really take to live a long and healthy life? Well, I'd like to suggest to you it involves at least two basic strategies. The first one is avoiding the major disease processes that we face. And the second involves not just avoiding disease, but optimizing health. Let's look at that first area initially. What are the major diseases that can rob us of longevity? Well, if you look throughout most of the world, you'll find that there are two diseases that stand at the top of many lists. Things like coronary artery disease, the cause of heart attacks, and cancer. Those are typically the two leading causes of death in many cultures throughout the world. Also up there are things like stroke, chronic lung disease, infectious diseases, high blood pressure and diabetes as contributing factors to some of those conditions. One of the questions always is, well, how do I know which one of those disease processes I should be most concerned about? Is it heart disease, cancer? Is it stroke? Do I need to look at my family history and then try to decide a natural approach to prevent that most likely killer, at least in my case, from coming and knocking on my door? Actually, the good news is quite revolutionary. Basically, it's the same lifestyle approach, the same natural approach that can help us avoid most of the leading killers. We've made it easy in this presentation to remember 9 essential elements in that disease-preventing lifestyle. We call it simply LifeStart. That's right, LifeStart. You say, well, what does that mean? Well, of course, the phrase is trying to encourage you to look at starting your life anew based on the information that we're reviewing in this presentation. And I say reviewing because much of this information has been out for many years. It's likely not to be something totally unfamiliar to you. But we've also called it LifeStart because LifeStart is a mnemonic. It's an acronym where each letter in that phrase refers to a specific health-enhancing strategy. 9 of them all told, LifeStart. Let's look at it in some detail. But before we go there, let me just highlight one other thing. We said we're going to be looking at 2 strategies. One strategy is preventing the leading killers from visiting us, but the other is enhancing the quality of our life. We'll find that the LifeStart elements help us in both of those domains. So just what are they? Well, the L stands for liquids. That's right, our choice of beverages in particular has a profound bearing on our likelihood of living longer and living better. We'll look at that in some detail in today's presentation. The I stands for interpersonal relations or interpersonal relationships. Now, this may not sound like something you've heard that much about. It's been relatively recently that researchers are realizing that this is not just something that involves our quality of life, but it actually has a role in helping us live longer. We'll look at that data. And I don't want you to get discouraged just as we're starting on this set of strategies to help you, because if you're watching this perhaps over the internet, maybe you feel quite isolated, we actually have help for you. We have personalized coaching opportunities available on the LifeStartSeminars.com website. So you can tap into opportunities to connect with other people. For those of you that are watching this in a group, maybe in a community center, a church, some other place where faith community gathers, we're glad that you're on this journey with other people, because we'll see that interpersonal relationships are one of the key elements in the LifeStart program. The next letter is F, and it stands for foods. Well, this is not surprising, is it? Dietary choices have a lot to do with how long we live as well as our life quality. We'll explore that as well in today's presentation. Exercise is critical. We're learning more and more about the health-giving benefits of exercise. We will explore that component as well. Then we come to the word start. So we've gone through L-I-F-E. Now we're looking at start. The S stands for sunlight. Sunlight has been something that, of course, no life could exist on the earth without it. We'll be looking at some of the health-giving properties for us individually when it comes to that important ingredient. Then we move on to something called temperance. I know it's an old-fashioned word, but it's a powerful concept. Many people today have set aside temperance, and in its place they've put, guess what? That's right, moderation. Well, temperance includes moderation, but it's moderation in things that are good. Temperance also includes the idea of total avoidance of things that are harmful. We'll explore that shortly. A stands for air, R stands for rest, and T for trust in divine power. Ready to embark on our journey looking at these elements just a little bit further? I hope so, because that's where we're going right now. Let's look at these 9 elements and take a careful look at just a few examples. We can't cover every one in detail. And by the way, if you do want more information or want this in writing, we actually have a free ebook on the website that walks you through the LifeStart paradigm. You can get it there at that very same website, lifestartseminars.com. Well, let's talk about liquids. One of my favorite studies when we speak about liquids grew out of research performed at Loma Linda University in Southern California. Dr. Jacqueline Chan, I can remember actually visiting with Dr. Chan, had this belief that if we looked at liquid consumption, we could get a window on why some people die sooner than others. Others, even of her peers, were saying this is ridiculous, this is not a big factor. But when the research was published in 2002 in the American Journal of Epidemiology, everybody who read it took notice. Take a look at what they found. What this is illustrating here is in the bars on the left, you see individuals who were drinking little water. They're drinking small amounts of water. You could see it here, less than 2 glasses per day. If you move over to the right side of the graphic, you can see now individuals who are drinking greater than 5 glasses of water every day. What's so remarkable is the height of the graphs. What we're looking at here, these bars, are representing the likelihood of dying from a heart attack or other causes of heart disease. And what you notice is those who are drinking more water cut their risk of dying from a heart attack roughly 50%. Now, granted, if you're looking very carefully at the graphic, you'll realize women didn't do quite that well, maybe a 40% decrease or so, but men were better than that, over 50% decrease in the likelihood of dying from a fatal heart condition. You say, well, boy, this is great news, Dr. DeRose. This gives me some ammunition now because I've been getting a lot of flack from my significant other when it comes to all that soda pop that I drink, but that's the only way I can get my water in. I'm going to take a screenshot of this, take a photograph of it if you're watching this in a meeting hall, and just bring it right home with me. Well, before you use this as ammunition for your soda consumption preferences, you've got to see that there was another graphic in that study. Let's take a look at it. Now we're looking at individuals who drank less than 2 glasses of other beverages. That's the leftmost bars. But you'll notice then, the rightmost bars are those who were drinking more of other beverages beside water. Do you see the problem? Other beverages were associated not with protection from heart disease, but rather an increase in the risk of fatal heart disease. That's right. Drink more of other fluids, other liquids, and your risk is increased. Now, some of you no doubt are saying, well, surely this couldn't be every other fluid beside water. Well, unfortunately, when you do research, sometimes you have small enough numbers that in order to have what we call statistical power, you have to clump some things together. So all Dr. Chan's team could do was group together all the other beverages that were being used. And presumably, this represents the beverages that are commonly consumed in our culture, because it was a study done in America. So the point here is simple. Although we may not be able to parse out whether every single beverage beside water is less than optimal, we can clearly say this from the research. Water drinking is health enhancing. And one example we've just seen, it can help you decrease your risk of dying from a heart attack. But we need to move on because there's other powerful things that can help decrease our likelihood of dying from killer diseases and also increase the quality of our life. Let's move on to talk about interpersonal relationships. Now there's no question that these aspects of life increase the quality of our life. Well, at least if those relationships are supportive. I'm sure you could think of some people that you'd rather not be around, and those people definitely are not enhancing the quality of your life when they show up. But the point is simply this: we are made as social beings, and regardless of whether you thrive on lots of social contact or perhaps a little bit more limited social contact, the point is most all of us do better when we are connected with other people. Indeed, that's what the research shows. But it's not just for quality of life. Look at this amazing study that was done some years ago, published in the cancer research literature. Before we actually look at the graphic, let me just give you the background. The background is one of the most prestigious epidemiologic studies in the world. It's what we call a longitudinal cohort study. That means you have a group of people and you're following them through time. In this case, the people that are being followed are nurses. It's a study known as the Nurses' Health Study being conducted by Harvard University. In this particular paper, the researchers actually identified a 10-year period between 1992 and 2002. What they then found is that in this group of over 100,000 women, nearly 3,000 of those nurses were diagnosed with breast cancer during that decade. This was breast cancer regardless of the stage. So we had early stage breast cancer, stage 1, all the way through stage 4 breast cancer. What the researchers did, though, was very interesting. They looked at survival in relationship to social connectedness. What did they find? Look at the data with me. If you look at the bottom bars in this graphic, you'll see represented in the light blue the breast cancer mortality among those who were socially integrated. You notice it's relatively low compared to the dark blue bar above it, which represents those who were socially isolated. Those who did not have lots of social connections, they had over double the risk of dying from breast cancer over the period of this study. But that was not anywhere near as remarkable as the upper bars, at least in the eyes of this physician. Because if you look at those upper bars, now we're not just looking at dying from breast cancer, we're looking at what is called all-cause mortality, likelihood of dying from any cause. And you see here, those women who were socially integrated had the lowest rates of death, whereas those who were socially isolated had 66% greater likelihood of dying from any cause. Social connectedness, interpersonal relationships, they are powerful as far as helping you live longer and live better. Let's move on now to the F in our LifeStart paradigm. The F stands for foods. Let me just give you one example on this topic. If you've explored our website, you know that we've got lots of health resources. Many are free resources, others there's some fee for. One of the products that's there is my Reversing Hypertension Naturally DVD series, 3 hours of DVDs that walk people through natural principles to control high blood pressure. Well, in that series, I learned a powerful thing about foods and how it impacts high blood pressure, which many of you realize is a risk factor for dying prematurely from things like stroke and heart attack, as well, by the way, as kidney failure. Hypertension has an interesting relationship with diet. Let me just share with you one salient insight. And this was one that was new to me when I was doing the research for the series. I learned that in plant products, in a variety of plants, whether they're oats or peas, legumes, a variety of plants, there are something called ACE inhibitory compounds. Now, for some of you that may not mean much, so let me just give you a little bit of background. I'm going to use some big words, but I'll walk you through it. There's a hormonal system in our body called the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. That system integrates the brain, the kidneys, various hormonal mechanisms that actually control blood pressure. If that system is out of whack, it will raise your blood pressure. One of the ways to tone that system down is by using ACE inhibitors. Some of the most popular blood pressure medications that have been around for many decades are the ACE inhibitors. It's actually a class of drugs that you can take in prescription form. Other drug classes, not just single agents, feed into the same system. So here's the point that I'm trying to make about diet. If you eat more plant products, more fruits, more grains, more vegetables, more seeds, you will be eating more ACE inhibitory compounds. And it requires no prescription from a doctor to take these. They're in regimented amounts in these natural plant foods. And research study after research study shows the same thing. Eat more plant foods, blood pressure comes down. Now don't get worried if your blood pressure runs on the low side like mine does. I eat lots of plant products and I'm not laying on the floor in shock, okay? It's not going to cause you to become what we call hypotensive. I've never seen that. But eat more of these plant foods. You'll find these are the same foods that lower your risk of cancer and heart disease by other mechanisms. They help you with diabetes and they have quality of life benefits as well. Let's hasten on now to exercise. Exercise, again, has far-reaching effects when it comes to enhancing our health. Remember, we talked about optimizing health as well as preventing killer diseases. Well, exercise not only helps to decrease the risk of cancers like colon cancer, which, by the way, if you've never smoked cigarettes, colon cancer is the single most likely cancer to kill you. And I'm speaking across gender lines. So even though many women die of breast cancer and many men of prostate cancer, if you combine the genders and you take cigarette smoking out of the equation, colon cancer is the leading killer. In part, colon cancer deaths are related to lack of exercise. Now, I know. One of you is thinking about that friend of yours that, ran marathons or played tennis every day and still had colon cancer. I'm not telling you exercise is a panacea, but we know it does decrease risk. Not only is cancer risk decreased by exercise, but so is heart disease risk, blood pressure is lower, metabolism works better, less risk of diabetes. You can even prevent the development of diabetes if you have what we call pre-diabetes by doing better with your exercise. But let's stop there for a minute. I told you that the same factors that help us live longer help us to live better. Did you know that exercise is one of the best things you can do for your mental health? That's right. If you have a tendency to depression, exercise tends to boost your mood. On the other hand, if you tend to be anxious, exercise helps to calm you down. Isn't that fascinating? Exercise has this mood and mental balancing effect. I recommend exercise to my patients regularly for both disease prevention and for life enhancement. While we're on that subject, exercise does something else that's remarkable. It actually improves blood fluidity. The technical term for that is it improves hemorrheology. Some of you perhaps have seen my mini-series on Longevity Plus. It actually builds on a lot of the things we're talking about in this short presentation, and it looks at it especially from the window of improving our circulation. That's right, improving circulation through things like exercise, diet, and other natural processes. So exercise is a boon to mental health. It's a boon to quality of life in general. That's life. What about the start? Well, let's look at the letter S. Sunlight is a powerful health-enhancing commodity. You know that there'd be no life on Earth without sunlight. It is sunlight which allows plants to engage in that process known as photosynthesis, which is really the foundation of life on our planet. Sunlight is health-giving as well when it comes to the human frame. We've known for decades how important the sunshine was for making vitamin D. Vitamin D is a very interesting vitamin. You don't have to ingest it by mouth. In fact, some would argue vitamin D is best optimized by judicious exposure to the sun. Because when the sun's rays hit your skin, they actually create vitamin D. Vitamin D is important for bone health. Without vitamin D, you can't optimally manage calcium functions in your body. And so to have strong bones, you need good levels of vitamin D. But that really is old news. The newer news with vitamin D is the cutting-edge information showing us that vitamin D is important for the immune system. That's right. If you have a tendency toward autoimmune diseases, diseases where the body is attacking itself, vitamin D seems to be able to tone down autoimmunity. On the other hand, vitamin D has the ability to enhance the immune system to help you fight infectious diseases. For some years, I lived in northern New England. In northern New England, we saw a lot of multiple sclerosis, an autoimmune disease that targets the myelin sheaths, the insulating covering of nerve fibers. There's a connection between living further from the equator, further north or further south, and developing MS, especially if you lived in those areas during your childhood years. The evidence is suggesting that this may well be an effect of insufficient vitamin D levels early in life. So here's an example of an autoimmune condition that's being linked to vitamin D. Let me just give you one other piece in the puzzle. A lot of people have been worried about vitamin D and cancer. They say, I don't want to get out in the sun too much. I don't want to get skin cancer. It is true that burning too much sun exposure may be a problem, but very interesting point, sunlight and vitamin D that it creates actually is cancer preventive for a host of major cancer killers. So get judicious sunlight exposure, don't get too much, and you'll be giving yourself another health enhancing factor that can help to extend your lifespan naturally. Let's move on to temperance. Remember, I told you earlier in this presentation, temperance is not just moderation when it comes to good things, it's total avoidance of things that are harmful. Well, what does that look like? What things do we need to totally avoid? What things do we need to be moderate in? Well, of course, when it comes to good foods, we need to be moderate in our eating habits. It is true that even when it comes to good food, we can overeat. In fact, if you look at data from the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, we find that more Americans are dying from overeating than from anything else, at least when it comes to nutrition per se. I mean, that's what the data seems to indicate. And so here's my point. Yes, eat those good plant foods. And by the way, if you're eating plant foods, especially vegetables, especially leaf, stem, and flower vegetables. Let me break that down. Things like spinach and cauliflower, cabbage, broccoli. Broccoli is a flower and a stem. You see how that works? If you're eating things like that, it is very hard to eat so many calories that you gain weight. So stock up on those foods, but be careful not to overeat, especially of the calorically dense foods. Obesity is driving epidemic rates in the United States of things like osteoarthritis, breaking down of joints in the hips and in the knees and in the low back. Obesity is driving things like high blood pressure and diabetes. It's associated with cancer. You get my point. So this is one area where we'd want to call for moderation. But what about an area where we'd want to totally avoid something? Well, I know I don't have a huge amount of company, but there's a growing number of health professionals that are lining up behind me, or I'm lining up with, whatever the case might be. I'm not trying to give a sense of preeminence, on the subject of alcohol. Although many people have touted alcohol as a health-giving beverage, the public health evidence does not indicate that. Alcohol, even in moderation, has problems with it. Since we're speaking about extending your lifespan naturally, let me give you a salient example from the cancer literature. The cancer literature indicates that even moderate consumption of alcohol increases the risk of a host of cancers. Let me give you an example in the quality of life realm that actually overlaps with longevity as well. Diabetes and alcohol, they do not get along well together. Dr. Joslin, the founder of the famous Joslin Diabetes Clinic there in the Boston area, Joslin actually took a notoriously firm stand against the use of alcohol not only by the patients of the Joslin Clinic, but also by his staff. Joslin was right. That's what the evidence indicates. Alcohol is a huge source of calories, nearly twice as many calories as pure sugar. It contributes to obesity, which of course contributes to our epidemic of diabetes. Drinking alcohol lowers your willpower, so if you're wanting to get on a better lifestyle, it's going to undermine that. Alcohol in and of itself can raise blood sugar, and then on top of it, if your blood sugar gets low, if you get hypoglycemic, alcohol interferes with your body's ability to address that. You want to add one more quality of life factor? I'll do it. In the absence of diabetes, alcohol itself can cause nerve damage known as neuropathy, one of the leading complications of diabetes. Well, fresh air, very important commodity. The leading pollutant in America, tobacco smoke. If you're a smoker, just one more reason to quit. You may have thought the damage was done. You've been smoking for many years, but the good news is the minute you stop smoking cigarettes, you stop feeding any cancers that may already have begun. You say, but I don't have cancer, Dr. DeRose. You don't know if you don't have cancer. Are you aware of that? When you have an early cancer, there are no tests that can detect it, but you can switch the balance, get rid of those tumor accelerators. That's right, tumor accelerators that are in tobacco smoke, and you may never become a cancer casualty. Rest. Oh, we got to talk about rest. I know some of you may feel like you want to rest after this high-speed journey through the LifeStart mnemonic, but rest is so important. It calms stress hormone levels down. It helps us to have better blood pressure, better blood sugar. It's just something that all the way around is beneficial. Make sure you're not cutting yourself short on sleep. It will also help your joints. If you're cutting yourself short on sleep, inflammatory compounds ramp up and you will tend to have more joint pain. The last element, trust in divine power, reminds us that most all of us come to some areas in our lifestyle where we need help. We need help outside of ourselves. From someone who once was an agnostic, it was a big change for me to recognize that there was a power outside of me that was willing to help me, but I really believe there is. That's why we speak about trust in divine power. If that doesn't resonate with you, we've got people with the LifeStart seminars that are willing to help you. You can access them on our website, LifeStartSeminars.com. Remember, that is your gateway for many other educational programs. Free educational programs are there for you. We've got great materials. You can learn more about living longer and better by using my mini DVD series called Longevity Plus. Bottom line is take advantage of what we've got for you. Make sure you pick up our free ebook as well. It'll walk you through that LifeStart mnemonic, give you more details, more practical insights. We're here for you. We're trying to help you in all the material that we present to help you live longer and better. That is what LifeStart is all about. For LifeStart seminars and for all of us at LifeStartSeminars.com, I'm Dr. David DeRose, wishing you great success in living longer and better.